If trying to figure out your vibe, your brand, your niche, your genre as an artist is giving you identity crisis, we have been in the same boat. In fact, we have been in the same roller coaster cart. By the way, welcome back to Violet Gaze. I'm Kira, so excited that you're here. In these parts, we talk about how to live the life of your dream as a full-time performing artist or visual artist. So if that's something that really speaks to you, go ahead and hit subscribe. So I have been reflecting so much on how I learned branding and marketing during the midst of 2020. We all know that we probably had some time to step back and figure out really what the next step was. For me, that was leaning more into marketing so I can make a little bit more money and then be able to funnel that money into pursuing my dreams as a performing artist. And what I found was working in marketing, I learned a lot about branding. And you would think that right when I learned about branding, I would learn so much about how to brand myself as an artist and how to find my genre and my niche, and that it would be so effortless for me to then be able to create. And that just didn't happen. It actually took me 6 years to really find my sound as an artist. And a year ago, I was saying on this channel, it took me 5 years to find my sound. So I totally thought I found my sound, and then I have been even still finding it. So it was a long process for me for so many different reasons. One of which being that I realized that my definition of niche, of brand, of genre, of style was totally different than what I was being told. So it's kind of like when you go to a carnival and you get a caricature done. You're basically sitting down, you're putting no effort into this, but someone else is highlighting parts of you that they see are most pronounced. And from you not having done anything other than be yourself, someone else already sees this perception of you without you saying who you are, saying what you've done, saying what you do. They already have a sense. And we're going to talk a little bit more about finding your style, I'll say. And when I say style, niche, brand, genre, all of those things, I think style just encompasses all of it. Deeper message here first, before everything, is that you're not actually finding anything. A lot of people think that finding a niche, finding a genre, finding a brand of your artistry is about going out and looking for it. What happens is a little bit like when all those clowns go into the clown car, into the tiny little car. There's 5, 6 clowns that go into this car that looks like it can only fit 1 or 2. And what ends up happening is that you're trying to fit all of these definitions and expectations and perceptions and shoulds all into this little car. And what ends up happening is that you feel like you then can't move, you can't create, because you have just fit yourself into one thing. You know, my style is country, or my style is transitional, or watercolor, or rock, or rom-com, whatever it might be. You're trying to fit yourself into this one thing. And what ends up happening is that analysis paralysis happens. You feel frozen, you can't move, you're in the clown car, your cheek is up against the window, and you have nowhere to move. You have nowhere to grow, to shake, to dance, nothing. This is what happens when you try to find a niche, when you try to pick a niche or a style or a vibe or a genre. So I'm going to give you 3 little steps to avoid this and to make your life so much easier when it comes to understanding what your style is. Step 1. Start everything by leaning in. Lean in is my word of the year of 2025. And I didn't think I would have a word of the year, but my acting teacher just asked all of us at the beginning of the year, and I focused on that. And I really like it because this is what it is when we go back to that caricature philosophy of embracing how you feel and embracing how you feel about the world. And we'll go more into that later on. If you are a performing artist, you're probably familiar with the concept of addressing every single moment. And this was a concept that I really learned in the Esper Studio, which is a Meisner technique of acting. It's the example of when there are a bunch of actors on stage and something drops from a table and that wasn't supposed to drop. The worst thing that you can do is ignore it as an actor, because all the audience is looking at it. They're like, what's going to happen? Oh my gosh, she's just ignoring what's going on. You need to address that moment. Pick it up, have a little laugh about it, or whatever that might be. You need to address every single moment. And the same thing goes with finding your style, is leaning in on what's going on. If something goes wrong, lean in on it, laugh about it. I tell my clients in my content and branding studio, Studio Violet, when they try to get comfortable posting reels or creating any sort of talking visual content, I say, if you're uncomfortable, say it. Say it. This is weird. I'm uncomfortable. I feel weird doing this. And automatically, it gives you so much space to breathe. And that is what people are going to see. That's what's going to differentiate without trying to reach for differentiation, without trying to find, this is who I am, guys. I need to find all of these things to find who I am. That's you. That's you right there. When it comes to being a visual or performing artist, the same thing goes. If you're a musician, but you've always been a more introverted person and you see all these other musicians performing and saying, how are we doing tonight? And that's totally not the type of person you are. Lean in on that. Lean in on, let's all have a cozy time. Maybe your shows are more intimate, more quiet. You talk about deeper things. You share only what you'd share with a close friend because you're not all about hyping everybody up and being extroverted. Lean in on that. That's going to come out in the way that you write music. It's going to come out in your style, in the shows, everything, just by you leaning in. This is an effortless thing to do. This is not forcing yourself into a box that you think you need to be in. You can also focus on the things that people have said in the past that you're too much or too little of. If people have said you're too loud or you're too opinionated or your artwork is too monochrome, maybe that's your thing. Maybe that's a big part of what you do because you love monochrome so much, or you believe that being loud as a female is something that we need to encourage each other to do. This is the beginning of it. Another part of it, of being not enough, if you've been told you're not enough of this, you're not enough of that. It took me a long time to understand the benefits of me not being able to be really big. I started in musical theater and I still would love to be on Broadway. That would be so cool. But I never got cast in any of the big main stage shows in college because I just didn't feel right about making things really big in my auditions. And so of course they're not going to cast me. And what I found is that it translates really well, I think, on YouTube and on film, hopefully, because the nuances are captured a little bit easier. So because I feel like I'm able to be a little smaller and not too big and loud, it's hopefully not too overwhelming for the people who are watching, and it serves my audience really well. And this is able to then help me reach more people and get myself closer to those creative dreams. For you, I want you to think about the things that people have told you you're too much or too little at, and find ways to lean more in on it. And this leaning should feel effortless. It shouldn't feel like you have to force doing something. If you feel like you're forcing, then you're likely trying to reach for something that you aren't. Step 2, focus less on who you are and more on what you do. This is specific to when people ask you, what do you do? I feel like so many of us dread when we go to social events and people ask us what we do because we do so many different things. What's interesting is that people ask what we do, and so many of us answer by saying our job title. Oh, I'm an account manager. Oh, I'm a bartender, or XYZ. What they're asking is, what do you do? Focus on that. And specifically, focus on what you're doing today or this week or this month. There is no rule to say that you need to answer, what are you doing in your life as a whole? I feel like we think that's what people are asking, and then we have to over-explain, oh, I'm an aspiring artist, but I'm a bartender, so I'm trying to use that money to then audition, and I'm trying to be an actor. I haven't really gotten anything yet, and we're trying to argue this thing that no one has actually ever even asked us yet. And I know you might be thinking, what does having conversations with people about my career have to do about finding my style? When you start getting comfortable talking about what you're doing, you can then start leaning in on the idea that you do not have to call yourself anything. You do not have to just put yourself in one box. You get to decide what you're doing every single day, every single week, and you get to decide how you're talking about it, and what you're talking about. This is going to be great practice for when you start creating more and you decide what you want to highlight. It's just this idea that you don't have to fit yourself into a box. You don't have to define yourself as one thing. You don't just have one answer. In life, in creativity, you don't just have to have one right answer like in school. This is helping you give yourself permission to grow by not calling yourself anything. Try the next time someone asks you to not say, I am a blank. Try instead to just list out the things that you've been doing. Specifically, it could be what you've been doing this month. Oh, this month, I've been working on this piece for this one client, this more abstract painting, or this month, I've been back in acting class. I've been creating some content on YouTube. I've been doing XYZ, and I guarantee you're going to have a better conversation. You're not going to feel like you have to over-explain what you're doing, and they're going to understand more about who you are because you're talking about and leaning in on the things that are happening right now instead of trying to answer this whole huge, ethereal, big, impossible to answer question of what do you want to do in your life, which we always translate. You're getting into the habit of not putting yourself in a box, of just listing out what's happening. And step 3 is understanding the style equation. Again, style, genre, vibe, it's all the same thing. The style equation is this: how people see you plus the lens in which you see the world. That is it. That is your style. How people see you and the lens in which you see the world. Now, both of those things are things you can control pretty well. Now, I'm not saying you can control how other people see you necessarily. I find that when we feel like we can overly control how people see us, we then get into this loop of wanting people to see us a certain way and then getting upset when they don't see us in that specific way. But what I'm saying is that both of these are under our control. Let me explain. I'm going to start with the second one, the lens in which you see the world. This goes back to the caricature philosophy. When you sit down for a caricature, you are not telling the artist what you do. You're not saying who you are. They don't need to know your name. They don't need to know your occupation. They just see you effortlessly being who you are and have a perception about that and create art based on that. And that is the exact effort that you need to have when you see the world through a lens. Every single experience you've had up until this point of you watching this right now has given you a specific lens on the world, a different perspective from someone else. And that already makes you wildly different than every single other person. You never have to worry about someone else who's also in your niche, who is also a performing artist, who's going to be in competition with you, because you both have wildly different perceptions of the world. And that is going to determine the type of performances you have, the type of music you write, the type of art you make. Not you finding a perfect niche, not you defining a perfect niche, you leaning more into how you see the world. Quick example. When I wrote my first song, I was in a space of anger and resentment and feeling like my music is a space for me to take back my power. And for other people, that works effortlessly. That is, they do it so well. I think of Hayley Williams from Paramore. Whether that's her intention or not, she does a fabulous job of really making people feel like this rally kind of anger, like power and excitement. And she does such a great job at it. For me, that is really not the lens in which I see the world. And that was why it was so hard for me to keep writing from that point, because it was such a stretch for me to get there. I had to think about, how do I see the world every day? How do I live day to day? I try to look for the positive in everything. I decorate my home in a really romantic, feminine, gentle, soft way. I have friendships where we're so supportive of each other. I value warm and soft and cozy things. I have cats. And I realized that by leaning more in on that, my songwriting all of a sudden became so much easier. I started leaning more in on drums that sounded pillowy instead of harsh, on chords that sounded hopeful instead of too dissonant and unfinished, lyrics that felt like they were working through something with love rather than sitting in a sense of anger. For you, if you're feeling a creative block, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like you've been forcing some sort of creativity, whether that's not being able to create art or not being able to write music, or you're not getting cast in the things you want to get cast on, reflect back on your day-to-day, because that is going to show you that one part of the equation, the lens in which you see the world. Now, the other part of the equation, how people see you, that is where branding comes in, visual branding, logo, font, colors, the way that you market yourself with messaging. And that is something that people will hire others for. Maybe you learn it yourself. And now beyond that, you really can't control what people think of you, how people perceive that. But the beauty of that is there are only two parts of that equation, and both of them helps you really handcraft the way others see you and the way you see the world. And that's that beautiful balance of what your style is, of how you create art. And remember, this is a service, right? You're always in service to your audience. The closer you can be to who you are, the easier it's going to be for you to create the service, for you to continue offering it day in and day out, and for others to really understand what you're creating. The more you lean in on finding this holistic part of who you are, the easier it's going to be to create. What I found too is that I had Kira the artist, and then there was me, like the content creator for Violet Gaze, and then there was the artist, and then there was having a business, and I felt like all of these people were separate and I had to separate them. And the more I leaned in on who I was and pushed these things together and became whole and saw myself as a whole artist, the easier it was for me to start writing music and submitting for auditions and talking on YouTube. And the same is going to go for you. If you want to learn a little bit more about how to create that more whole artist, specifically from my experiences, go ahead and watch the next video. Until then, stay inspired, stay creative, and I will see you next time, friend. Bye.